So let's take a look at our stock footage first. You'll see that I've got a few different elements from the Action Essentials pack that you saw in the last tutorial. And also, I've got the fireball rendered out from the previous video as well. I just went ahead and rendered it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I rendered it with transparency, which, you could just do by rendering plus alpha. But it's not necessary, because you're going to be adding it in the end anyway. Let's go ahead and delete this. And yeah, another fireball. And this other thing that we have, which is a flamethrower that I got from Detonation Films HD. It was just a DVD that they provide that is actually really cool. For like 18 bucks, you can get 10 flamethrower effects. In fact, this is the exact effect that I'll be using in this video. And if you want, you can get the other one, which is Dragon Fire, if you want. It's pretty cool and really cheap. So, it works great for the video. And you'll also see that I got some audio here. These two sound effects I actually just sampled from a YouTube video from the Slow-Mo guys, which is essentially these two guys named Gavin and Dan just film random things at super slow motion with their, nice Phantom camera. So I'd follow those guys online if you want. They're really cool. See, slow motion. But that's irrelevant to the point. My point is that they had some good audio, and it's always a good idea if you like the audio, just, sample it. Use it how you can. And lastly, we have our source footage. You'll see that I actually used 3 different clips. I have the clip of me on the left, a clip of my sister in the middle, and then I have a clip of my friend Sam here on the right. And what we're going to do is we're going to stitch these 3 videos together so that it's one long, albeit very wide, video. And then once we take that whole video together, we will animate a 1280 by 720 composition from left to right, as if the camera itself is panning. And then we have some pictures of like the sky to fill in whatever we miss from the video. That's essentially what we'll start off with. So let's go ahead and let's make a new composition. Let's make it, we want it really wide. I'd say 2500 by 720. 10 seconds, yeah, about that much. So you'll see right here we have a really wide composition. And if we bring in our left footage, hold on shift to let it snap, it just, takes up half. If we take in our right footage, drop it right there, you'll see that they don't exactly line up. That's okay. Let's go ahead and line it up ourselves. About right there. You'll see that there's some color differences. We'll go ahead and fix that right away. Let's take some curves, put on the right footage. Let's see. Not too dramatic, just kind of match it if need be. Anyway, something along the lines of that. We'll be, touching up more on that in a minute. So let's go back to our project. And we want to bring in the middle footage, which will sit right here in the middle. And you could scale this however you want. I like to scale it down, actually. So that, the more you scale it down, the further she looks like as if she's in the back. To a certain extent, you don't want to make it look like she's way out there. I think something about like that works out pretty nicely. And you'll see some replication in some of the footage. My point here is that, no one knows what the site looks like. You could mess with it however you want, and as far as they're concerned, that's how it actually looks like in real life, so it's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to take the pen tool and literally just cut around her right here. And then fade it out. Hit F on the keyboard to bring up the mask properties. Let's get rid of the mask so we can actually see what we're looking at. And then fade. You see, we kind of get this effect where it looks like it's there. We still need to fill in, you know, the top right of the sky here, so let's go ahead and drag in the right sky. Hold on H to bring up the hand tool so you can drag your footage. Hit T on the keyboard to bring up opacity and put it down to like 50%. That way you can just kind of line it up. Goes about right here. As you can see, we'll be needing some things in the middle. Actually, let's drop this to the bottom. Put the opacity back up to max. And take our right footage here. And double click on the rectangle mask. Pick up our mask tool. And just drag these out. And just feather the edge. And of course we'll need some working here in the middle. That's not too big of a deal. Maybe we can feather a little bit less. So let's bring in the middle sky. We can fix this a little as well. Scale this down. Looks to go about right here. And just kind of cut what should be there. Hit F on the keyboard to bring up the feather tool again, and feather it out. See right now, this is kind of out of place in the sense that it's super bright. I would agree with that assessment. So let's go to Effect and go to our curves again, and let's drop the highlights a little. There you go, perfectly matched. Yay. But there's still this issue with the dirt here in the middle, and at the time I didn't get a dirt shot of the ground, so what I did is, of the left footage, I duplicated it, hit Control D to duplicate, and then right click and go to time, freeze frame. So you'll see that we just have a freeze frame of the shot. Take the pen tool and just get a nice big section of dirt. And that way, we can move it. Well, let's move it up top first. And I haven't even, you know, feathered the footage at all yet, and it's hard to kind of see, you know. So bring up F, feather that out, and voila. We have our composited image. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and name our comp. Let's call it Source Footage Comp. This is what we'll have to, you know, make our video with. But that's, you know, not the end of it yet. We still have to time our footage. Our shot in the end is going to be about 6 seconds long, so about right here, let's see. There's the left footage. Is this the freeze frame? Yeah. Let's call this dirt. So let's go to our left footage and right click on it and go to time, enable time remapping. And so right as, you know, fire off the shot, throw down a keyframe and then Control Alt and then click. That'll cause it to freeze frame at that moment on. Because what we're going to do is go into slow motion, and I'm going to pan over here, so this will be out of the scene, but it needs to stay in the scene for all of it. So we'll drag it out to the end. For the right footage, it's almost the exact opposite. We need it to end over here somewhere. So about the 4-second mark, we want it to be there. So just before he goes up with his arms, you know, bringing the dirt out of the ground, well, first let's go to enable time remapping, and then hit a keyframe. And this is the one, actually just go one frame up, and now hit another keyframe. And this is the one that you want to Control Alt click on. So this makes this a still frame from this point behind, and then it goes to. And if you right click and go to keyframe interpolation, you can turn this into a Bezier curve, or you can hit F9 on the keyboard. That works well. So then it smoothly transitions into it. I'll actually do that with this one too. For some reason the F9 key is not working on my keyboard. And I've not bothered to figure out how to fix it. So the same thing here, you know, we don't want this, so let's drag this beginning point of the right footage to the beginning. Even though it's all still, we need it, you know, in the comp to go along. Same thing with everything else. This is a freeze frame, so we want that to go to the end. We don't want my sister, you know, blanking out like that. So we'd actually slow this down. Time stretch. Let's go 2.5 because I believe it's 60 frames per second. 250%. So Control Z. Time stretch, and we want this to be 250% or a factor of 2.5. So let's remap this. Get a little bit more timed evenly. Starts about right here. Okay. Seems good enough. Control A and then minimize it. Let's see, we have everything going towards the end. Even though in the end it's only going to go to about the mark right here. So let's go to the right footage and drag that over a little. Shoot. See how it pops back and forth like that? That's what we're checking for. So U on the keyboard, and let's drag this point here to forever. Right, so now our source footage is essentially finished. Maybe we can move that over just a little bit. And this is something that we can easily change later. So let's go ahead and take our composition itself from the project window and drop it into a new composition. And let's label this one, hit enter, not that one, in the project window, hit enter, let's call it this big composition. Yeah, something like that, I don't know. And this is where we're going to be doing the majority of our work. Like, for instance, we will take out our fireball that we rendered in the previous video, and this is literally what I did for the original effect. Is I just brought it in, placed it, hit S on the keyboard to scale it, and scaled something down, and I animated its position. It's the exact same, you know, fireball. It's up to you to, you know, use it how you want. But first, we have a dilemma, and that is that our flamethrower here, we want to have in slow motion. So one thing you can do is drag it out into a new composition, go to just before it starts, and then go to about the end of its travel, and that's the size that we're going to use. It's about right here. Go a little bit further, maybe just right here maybe, and then Alt right bracket to end it, and then time stretch, and we want this to be about 10% its original speed. So just go to 1000, so it'll slow it down by a factor of 10. So now, you know, we don't want that specifically, we need the frame rate. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and turn on frame blending and then put it on the actual frame blending and not the fade in kind, because we need each individual frame to be unique. Let's see if I can preview this for you. Alright, so this is the frame blended flame. As you can see, it's not the best looking in the world, but it's something, because in the end you have a little bit of slow motion in the final comp. I only have just a little bit that's actually legitimately slow. Like the very beginning of it is fast, and then it speeds up after the quick moment of slowdown. So this is one way to do it. I actually use Trougt, which is a great plugin, and I would recommend it for doing stuff specifically like this. But we don't want to put this into our composition. We're going to want to render it out. So we can go ahead and just take this, actually composition settings, and let's extend the time. 8. So where does it end? About right here. So let's bring this in, and then we're going to add this to our composition, add to render queue, and essentially just render out settings. For this one, I would go to QuickTime, and then PNG with a spatial setting of about 70 maybe. If you're really, interested in preserving all the quality, put it up to 100 or, 90 or so at least. And then render it out where you want to. So then you can import that back into your footage and not have to worry about your processor calculating the interpolated frames every single time you change a frame. That's unreasonable, and it would bog down your machine. So set up a proxy like that, or just bring it in completely. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to bring in the slow motion one that I've got pre-made. Here's what's made with Trougt. See, it's a lot nicer looking. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete this composition, the Flamethrower 10 comp. Yes. And we'll go back to this, and I'm going to drop in my slow motion fire. And right away that you'll see it's, all black. Position where we want to, about right here. And we'll hit F4 on the keyboard, and then set it to add. So that's essentially the effect we want. It's just fire like that. But you'll also notice that this doesn't look good at all. The transfer mode is set to add correctly, but it's not what we want. And that's because our project is not actually set to be in linear mode yet. So let's click on that and go to the bit depth and set it to 16 bits per channel. And then for the working space, go to sRGB right here. So then click on linearize working space. And if you hit OK, bam, realistically rendered fire. To a certain extent. Granted, something of this magnitude would have all the blacks be legitimately black instead of see-through, like you'd see here. But, it's just a small little video. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn off our flamethrower for a moment here, and let's bother with animating the fireball itself. First, let's set this to add. Probably add a bit of a curve. Yeah, doesn't really seem to matter much. Maybe make it a little smaller. Hold down Y on the keyboard, you can move the anchor point to the center of the fireball, just in case you need to rotate it or something. So let's go ahead and hit P on the keyboard and animate its position by keyframing it, like frame by frame. So, moves here, and just as I'm about to throw it, now I'm going to actually hit page down on the keyboard to go frame by frame. And remember this spacing right here. We're going to continue that. So about right here, let's keep the going. One frame down, keep the spacing going. Another frame down, same spacing. One more frame, space again. One more frame, and there we go. It's going to continue at the same velocity that you threw it at. And perhaps as I'm about to throw it right here, let's position or keyframe the rotation. So hit Shift and R, then let's keyframe that. So let's move this back like one, further one, and hold down W on the keyboard and rotate it sideways as such. We can actually move this one maybe 2 frames forward. So like the flames that are going upwards, as you throw it, they kind of go sideways, as if being trailed behind. Pretty nifty. And one thing that is absolutely necessary for this, hit F4, is to add motion blur. Otherwise, it's just going to look silly. So add motion blur and turn it on for the composition. That way, when it's actually moving, looks like it's actually being thrown in the scene. That's being really fast. So then at about right here, we're going to keyframe the opacity. So start about right here and go to the end, or about right here. One more frame actually, and then set it down to 0. So the idea is that it blends into the fire, the flame itself. And this is where we will begin seeing the flamethrower. Alright, we need to speed up the fire. And by doing that, we will go to time, enable timer mapping. So let's go to where, let's turn it on first. You want the fire to be at its most at about right here. Maybe a little less. Put a keyframe there. Make it Bezier. And then we're going to take the first keyframe and drag it closer. So that way it's much closer to real time. Then it just hits slow motion. And we could just drag this to where we want it. So let's make this faster. And then just, you know, keyframe it like that. And of course this could use some work. I spent probably 15 hours on the original shot in the video itself, not including the test effect before that. You know, just fine-tuning. You keep fine-tune until, you know, there's no tomorrow. But for the sake of time, I will not fine-tune it exactly. This is essentially what you'll be seeing. So it goes to here, and then slowly we'll speed up. I'm gonna make the composition longer so I can get the end of it. Fantastic. Let's go to the end, somewhere around right here, add a keyframe, and drag it closer. And now this will allow us to adjust the timing of it. Something like that is what we want. Fantastic. One thing you can do for making the fire just kind of glow more is duplicate it and then add a fast blur to it, like you've seen in the other ones, and just blur it out. That's one thing you can do. That's a little too bright, so I'd lower the opacity a little. Or you can go ahead and just add a glow. I shy away from using glow some of the time because sometimes it just kind of doesn't look good like that. And this is another one of those things you could just tweak forever. But like I said, a fast glow or a fast blur is something that's decent. I'll just use that for now. Alright, now we have a fairly radiant flamethrower. Let's go ahead and add in our dirt and whatnot. So now we're focusing over here. Let's drag this into place. We're going to want that to be about right there. Let's take our pen tool. This would be a lot faster if you've watched the tutorial on my friend Sam jumping out of the ground. There's a lot of stuff going into basically using dirt elements in a neat way. So hit F on the keyboard, put this in subtract, put it at like 10. Cool. So now we can position that. And I would duplicate it and offset it a little. So add our dirt charge 19 in here. Move it into position. Remember, we're only going to use like maybe half a second of the dirt footage, so normally we would bother, feathering out the edges like this, but in this scenario, it's not that big of a deal because you just won't see it. So, but we will want to F on the keyboard, feather it out some, and subtract. So now we have our dirt. We can put this underneath maybe one of them. Let's move it all back. And what's cool about this dirt 19 effect here is that we could duplicate it and take the bottom one and scoot it backwards, so that there's always like a perpetual filler in it. So even though it kind of fades out, it still feels like there's a lot of dirt here. And that's mainly because there is. And you'll also see that this doesn't look quite good down here. Let me change that. I think it's on the dirt 19, yeah. And this is where the dust at the camera comes into play, to just kind of disguise that. And this we will put an entire mask around and feather this out. So about here is where it's going to start. Actually, all of these I'm going to want to lower. Just realized that. So select all of them. Don't open them. And just make it a little lower. This is supposed to be more at his feet. Control Z. Make sure you only got the... Again, Control Z. There we go. This is what I want to make earlier. Let's drop the opacity on that. It's a little too intense in my opinion. It's also just all a little fast. Let's go back to the flamethrower. Let's speed this up. That way we can move all of our dirt forward in time, or backwards in time. So that the final effect, something like that. And of course, buddy here is reacting way too late, so let's fix that. I also, this was filmed in 60 frames per second, so if you want to slow it down, just make his, fist going up in the air a lot slower. That's also doable. So right there. And this is where we're going to add the Fireball Day 01. Just going to add it here. Make sure this is set to add. Hit F4. Change the transfer mode to add. And this we're going to put behind. Well, first we're going to scale it down. After I undo that. Hit S on the keyboard to bring up the scale. And let's drop this down. Actually, I'm going to compress it a little too. Time it as we need. This is going to go below several of the dirt elements. Just kind of to show that the fire is being deflected. It's about right here that we're going to end it anyway. Alright, we are very close to being done. Except for, I guess we still have to do the lighting for this whole scene. Remember, I'm not fine-tuning this like crazy, like I would for my full production, but just kind of showing you what I did to make it. So for the lighting, how I got the glow on the ground that you see here, I took an orange solid and I just, animated a mask to go along with the ground. So let's go ahead and go up to Layer, New, Solid. And let's sample this as like an orange color. I guess we could change it if we want. Along the lines of that. Go ahead and turn it off. We will be wanting to put it on Add. Maybe drop the transparency down to like 60. But first off, let's cut a nice big swath. Go to our masks and feather that out. Let's turn it back on. Alright. Now, we're going to want to make another mask. So click on the orange solid, and over here, we're just going to draw what we're going to actually animate, which is just going to be this big curve. Now, bam, bam. Make sure it's long enough to go around your whole thing. Now there. So let's make sure this is subtract. And we could feather this out even more than the last one. So we get a nice gradual. Let's animate the mask path. So select the whole thing. And we're just going to follow the fire. So right here, it's about right there. Let's go one frame up, a couple frames up. And just kind of keep doing this until, So now if you go back, see, just kind of travels forward. Still a little bright for my liking. I'm going to drop it down a little bit. Hit T, maybe 40%. That's looking a little better. Plus, what I did is I just took another mask and I just kind of traced out the back of my leg. F, make it subtract, and feather this one like crazy. Maybe drop the expansion a little. So that's essentially what we have for the lighting. And one last thing to do is to add a optical flare. So I hit Control Y to bring up a solid and make it a black one. And then go over here to our, okay. Type optical flares, not fallers. Alright, on black, change this to add, and animate the keyframe. Let's change our position, center position to about right here. Let's go to options. Again, this isn't necessary. I like to add it because it looks pretty. See, let's use the same one we used in the last tutorial. I believe that was Sector Golden, maybe? Let's use this one, though. Yeah, Streak Rose. Okay. And let's get the right color for the tent. Okay, look at that. Look at that intensity. That's cool looking. But we're going to want to animate the position. So let's go ahead and hit that. Same as we did before. We can actually turn it off. Make our center good. Something along the lines of that. Alright. And we're also going to fade out the brightness about right here. So let's also hit the brightness. Put this to 0. Hit U on the keyboard. Let's go up a couple frames. Let's have it start fading out right here. So put this brightness at like, I don't know, 70%. Turn it back on. So then it just kind of goes away with the fireball itself. Another thing I like to do is to rotation offset. Put this at about here. Keyframe that, and just as I'm throwing the fire, hit UU. Another keyframe. So as I'm throwing it right here, let's set this back to 0 so it's along lines. So you get this kind of like, you know, yes, that. Alright, we're very close to being done now. Let's go back to our project and let's make a new composition. Call this final animation. One last trick I want to show you. Let's make this about 6 seconds long. Oh, composition settings. I forgot to change the size to 1280. And let's bring in our big composition. Let's go ahead and start it over here. As the fire goes, bring up P on the keyboard and hit position, then go forward, hold down shift, and we'll pan over. This could use a lot of work. So essentially, we follow the fire, which is, I think, pretty cool. But, you know, a static animation like this, here, I'll do a quick render. See? Like, you get, yeah, the animation is there, but it's still, it's kind of useless because it looks bad. You don't want to have something looking bad because of something that's easy to fix. And I will show you how to fix that. First, I wanted to put the fire below the other dirts. So let's go to our final animation, and I'll show you a quick and easy way to animate the Bezier curve by hitting the graph editor here. So select your position, and right away you'll see that this is our change of position versus time, and you'll see that it's linear. And if we take this and just kind of drag it downwards, we add a Bezier curve to it. So right away it just kind of starts off slowly and it'll speed up until the very end here. Also, this is going to be our final frame, because if you go, it looks bad if you just kind of stop. So, make sure to have our render there. And to change how slow this starts, we'll drag this handle out and just kind of make this steeper. Let's make this, you know, 0% influence. So now, we could just make this really steep. So it starts off slow and then ends up going really fast. I want it to go a little faster than that, granted. Probably move this back just a little bit. Throw, and kind of goes on. And there we go. That's the essence of our effect. I'll do another RAM preview. Alright, so this is the essence of our effect right here. It's just going to be a quick, you know, cut off, so you get to the end here, and just enough to see that, you know, the dirt comes out of the ground to block the fire. And I understand that this is a very, very specific scenario of an effect, that not everyone is going to be making an effect like this, and, you know, it's a matter of finding what are the key principles and ideas to take away from this tutorial, and I would have to say it'd be the timer mapping of, you know, slow motion fire, make it slow motion first, and then, you know, make it faster, because it's easier to lose frames than gain frames. So that's one thing for the epic slow-mo, and the other is to use the graph editor with the position to change, you know, the animation of a very wide composition. So it looks like the camera is actually panning. You could also do this by just making, you know, using 1080p footage and zooming in on it. Same principle, but with this you get a lot more detail on a lot larger scale. Alright, I understand this is not as good looking as the preview itself, but I hope that you will kind of take away the right, you know, things that you know how to fine-tune, and I'll actually just go ahead and throw out the LL. Delay this and keyframe this. right here till about maybe this point, and then just drop the volume down a lot. And then we'll add in the speed back up sound effect. L and solo this. So now we get this overall effect of sound. We could crossfade these sounds a little bit nicer. Let's try that again. Fantastic. All right, I believe this should be everything for this. I hope you learned something, because in the end, you know, that's what you come to these tutorials to do, right? Is to, you know, learn how to do something. This may not be the most valuable tutorial, but if you came away learning something, then that's, you know, I did my job. So that's what makes me happy. All right, cool.